History has a way of polishing certain names until they shine so brightly that everyone else fades into the background, and in the story of World War II, few narratives are more skewed than the leadership of the United States Navy. When people think of naval victory, they often recall bold commanders on the front lines, dramatic battles like Midway, or charismatic figures who captured headlines. Yet behind the scenes, orchestrating the entire machinery of naval warfare, stood a man whose influence was unmatched, whose decisions shaped the outcome of the war across multiple oceans, and whose authority extended over every major naval operation. That man was Admiral Ernest J. King, a figure as brilliant as he was controversial, as powerful as he was overlooked. King was not the kind of leader who sought popularity or public admiration. In fact, he often seemed to reject it entirely. Known for his sharp tongue, rigid discipline, and uncompromising standards, he inspired more fear than affection among those who served under him. But in the chaos of global war, when hesitation could cost thousands of lives and indecision could shift the balance of power, these traits became assets rather than liabilities. King did not govern through charm, he governed through clarity, authority, and an unyielding focus on results. He understood that war was not a stage for personal glory but a system that demanded coordination, efficiency, and relentless execution. From the moment the United States entered World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Navy faced an enormous challenge. It had to fight a two-ocean war, confronting powerful enemies in both the Pacific and the Atlantic. This required not only ships and sailors but also a coherent strategy that could unify countless moving parts. King stepped into this role with a level of control that was unprecedented. As Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet and Chief of Naval Operations, he effectively ran the entire Navy. Every major decision, every strategic direction, every deployment ultimately traced back to him. While other admirals commanded fleets and fought battles, King was the one ensuring that those battles could even be fought. One of his greatest strengths was his ability to think in terms of systems rather than isolated events. Where others saw individual battles, King saw the entire war as an interconnected network. He understood logistics in a way that few commanders did. Ships needed fuel, ammunition, maintenance, and replacement. Troops needed transport, supplies, and coordination with other branches of the military. The Pacific theater alone stretched across thousands of miles of ocean, making supply lines incredibly vulnerable and complex. King prioritized building and protecting these lifelines, knowing that without them, even the most brilliant tactical victories would mean little. At the same time, he pushed aggressively for offensive action in the Pacific. While some leaders favored a more cautious approach, King believed in maintaining pressure on the enemy. He supported strategies that would carry the fight directly toward Japan, island by island, cutting off supply routes and weakening their defensive perimeter. This approach required not just courage but also an immense level of coordination between naval forces, air power, and ground troops. King played a central role in aligning these elements, ensuring that operations were not isolated efforts but parts of a larger, unified campaign. Despite his central role, King rarely appeared in the dramatic narratives that dominated public perception. The spotlight often fell on field commanders who led troops into battle, men whose actions could be captured in headlines and celebrated in real time. King's work, by contrast, was less visible but no less critical. He was the architect behind the scenes, the one who made sure that resources were allocated correctly, that strategies were coherent, and that the Navy operated as a single, cohesive force. Without his oversight, the scattered efforts of various fleets could have easily turned into chaos. His relationship with other military leaders was complex. King was known for being fiercely independent and sometimes difficult to work with. He clashed with counterparts in the army and even with other naval officers. Yet these conflicts often stemmed from his intense commitment to what he believed was right for the war effort. He was not interested in compromise for the sake of harmony, he was interested in results. This made him a challenging colleague but also a highly effective leader in a time when clarity and decisiveness were essential. Another aspect of King's leadership that set him apart was his refusal to be bound by tradition when it no longer served a purpose. The Navy, like many institutions, had long-standing customs and hierarchies that could slow down decision-making. King was willing to bypass these when necessary, streamlining processes and empowering commanders to act quickly. He trusted competence and initiative, rewarding those who delivered results and holding accountable those who did not. This created a culture of performance that was crucial in sustaining the pace of wartime operations. King also played a significant role in expanding the capabilities of the Navy. Under his leadership, the U.S. Navy grew into a massive force capable of projecting power across the globe. Shipbuilding programs accelerated, new technologies were developed, and training systems were enhanced to prepare sailors for the demands of modern warfare. He understood that victory would not come from a single decisive battle but from sustained superiority over time. This required continuous investment in resources, innovation, and human capital. Yet for all his contributions, King's legacy remains relatively understated compared to other figures of the war. Part of this is due to his personality. He did not cultivate a public image or seek recognition. He was content to let others take the spotlight if it meant the mission was accomplished. Additionally, the nature of his role made it harder to tell his story in simple terms. It is easier to celebrate a dramatic victory than to explain the complex systems and decisions that made that victory possible. There is also a deeper lesson in how history assigns credit. Narratives tend to focus on individuals who fit a certain mold, charismatic, visible, and easy to understand. Leaders like King, who operate at a higher level of abstraction, often do not fit this mold. Their contributions are diffuse, spread across countless decisions and actions that collectively shape outcomes. As a result, they can be overlooked, even when their impact is immense. Understanding King's role challenges us to rethink how we define leadership. It is not always about being at the front lines or receiving public acclaim. Sometimes it is about creating the conditions for success, about managing complexity, and about making decisions that others may never fully see or appreciate. King exemplified this kind of leadership. He was not the face of the Navy's victories, but he was the force that made those victories possible. His story also highlights the importance of resilience under pressure. Leading an entire navy during a global war is an immense responsibility, one that requires constant attention, adaptability, and mental strength. King operated in an environment where the stakes could not have been higher, where every decision carried significant consequences. Yet he maintained his focus, navigating the challenges with a steady hand and a clear sense of purpose. In many ways, King's leadership style may seem harsh or unapproachable by modern standards. But within the context of World War II, it proved effective. He demanded excellence because the situation demanded it. He enforced discipline because the margin for error was minimal. His approach was shaped by the realities of war, where lives depended on the ability to act quickly and decisively. As we look back on World War II, it becomes clear that victory was not the result of a single person or moment but a complex interplay of strategy, leadership, and execution. Admiral Ernest King stands as a reminder of the leaders who operate behind the scenes, whose contributions are not always celebrated but are nonetheless essential. His story invites us to look beyond the surface, to question the narratives we accept, and to recognize the broader forces that shape history. In the end, the legacy of Ernest King is not just about what he achieved but about what he represents. He embodies a form of leadership that prioritizes results over recognition, substance over style, and long-term success over short-term acclaim. It is a legacy that may not always be visible, but it is deeply ingrained in the outcomes it helped create, a silent but powerful testament to the impact of those who led from the shadows while others stand in the light. Before his name became tied to the highest levels of naval command, Ernest J. King was already shaped by a lifetime of discipline, ambition, and relentless self-belief. Born in 1878, he came of age during a period when the United States was beginning to understand the importance of sea power, influenced heavily by thinkers like Alfred Thayer Mahan, whose ideas about naval dominance would later echo in King's own strategic thinking. From an early stage, King demonstrated a sharp intellect and a stubborn determination that would define his entire career. He entered the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis, where his performance was marked not only by competence but by a refusal to accept mediocrity in himself or others. At Annapolis, King built the foundation of his professional identity. He was not the most socially beloved cadet, but he was respected for his focus and ability to grasp complex naval concepts quickly. His peers often found him intense, even difficult, but that intensity came from a deep internal drive to excel. He graduated near the top of his class, setting the tone for a career that would steadily rise through the ranks. Unlike many who relied on charm or connections, King relied on performance. He believed that authority should be earned through competence, and he carried that belief into every position he held. His early naval assignments exposed him to a wide range of operational environments. He served on various ships, learning the practical realities of life at sea, the importance of coordination, and the unpredictable nature of naval operations. These experiences gave him a grounded understanding of the Navy, from the lowest levels to the highest. He was not a distant strategist who only worked from behind a desk. He had first-hand knowledge of what it meant to command men, operate ships, and make decisions under pressure. One of the defining aspects of King's early career was his adaptability. The Navy was undergoing significant changes during this period, transitioning from traditional battleship-focused strategies to incorporating new technologies such as submarines and aircraft. King recognized early on that the future of naval warfare would depend on innovation. He did not cling to outdated ideas simply because they were familiar. Instead, he embraced change, positioning himself at the forefront of emerging developments within the Navy. His involvement with naval aviation is a clear example of this forward-thinking mindset. At a time when many officers were skeptical of the value of aircraft in naval operations, King saw their potential. He trained as an aviator, becoming one of the early adopters of aviation within the Navy. This was not a symbolic move, it required rigorous training and a willingness to step outside the traditional career path of a naval officer. By doing so, King gained insight into a new dimension of warfare that would later play a crucial role in World War II. His understanding of both surface and air operations gave him a strategic advantage that few of his contemporaries possessed. As he continued to rise through the ranks, King developed a reputation for being highly demanding. He expected excellence from those under his command and was quick to criticize mistakes. This approach earned him both respect and resentment. Some saw him as unnecessarily cutthroat, while others recognized that his standards pushed people to perform at their best. In an environment where errors could have serious consequences, King believed that strict discipline was not just desirable but necessary. His leadership style was also characterized by a strong sense of independence. King was not easily swayed by popular opinion or external pressure. He trusted his judgment and was willing to stand by his decisions, even when they were unpopular. This trait would later define his role during World War II, but it was evident even in his earlier assignments. He did not seek approval, he sought results. This often put him at odds with superiors and colleagues, but it also set him apart as a leader who was willing to take responsibility. King's career progression included a series of increasingly important commands. He served as a captain, commanding ships and later taking on roles that involved broader strategic responsibilities. Each position added to his understanding of naval operations and strengthened his ability to manage complex situations. He was not simply moving up the hierarchy, he was accumulating experience that would later prove invaluable. During the interwar period, King held several key positions that allowed him to influence the direction of the Navy. He was involved in training programs, operational planning, and organizational development. These roles required a different kind of leadership, one that focused on preparation rather than immediate action. King approached these responsibilities with the same intensity he brought to operational commands. He understood that the effectiveness of the Navy in future conflicts would depend on the groundwork laid during peacetime. His time as commander of the Atlantic Squadron further expanded his perspective. This role required him to think beyond individual ships or units and consider the broader strategic environment. He had to coordinate multiple elements, anticipate potential threats, and ensure that forces were ready for deployment. This experience was a stepping stone to the level of command he would later assume during the war. King's personality continued to be a defining factor in his career. He was known for his blunt communication style, often speaking in a direct and unfiltered manner. While this could be off-putting, it also eliminated ambiguity. Those who worked with him knew exactly where they stood. There was little room for misinterpretation, which in a military context could be a significant advantage. Clear communication, even when cutthroat, ensured that orders were understood and executed precisely. Despite his cutthroat exterior, King possessed a deep understanding of leadership dynamics. He recognized the importance of competence and initiative in subordinates. While he demanded high standards, he also valued those who could think independently and act decisively. He was not interested in micromanaging every detail, he wanted capable leaders who could carry out objectives effectively. This approach created a network of strong commanders who could operate with a degree of autonomy, a crucial factor in the vast and complex operations of World War II. As global tensions began to rise in the late 1930s, the Navy started to prepare for the possibility of large-scale conflict. King was among those who took this preparation seriously. He understood that war would not be a limited engagement but a comprehensive challenge that would test every aspect of the Navy. His previous experiences, combined with his forward-thinking approach, positioned him as a key figure in these preparations. When the United States entered World War II following the attack on Pearl Harbor, the need for strong leadership became immediate and undeniable. King's career up to that point had effectively prepared him for this moment. He had the operational experience, the strategic insight, and the Manasika toughness required to take on a role of immense responsibility. His appointment to the highest levels of naval command was not an accident, it was the result of decades of consistent performance and demonstrated capability. What makes King's journey particularly compelling is how it reflects the development of a leader over time. He was not suddenly elevated to a position of power without preparation. Every stage of his career contributed to his readiness. From his early days at Annapolis to his involvement in aviation, from his ship commands to his strategic roles, each experience added a layer to his understanding and ability. His story also highlights the importance of embracing change and innovation. By recognizing the potential of new technologies and adapting to evolving circumstances, King positioned himself in the Navy for success. He did not resist change out of comfort or tradition, he pursued it as a necessity. This mindset was critical in a war that would be defined by rapid technological and strategic shifts. At the same time, his career underscores the challenges of leadership. Being effective does not always mean being liked. King's demanding nature and cathora communication style made him a polarizing figure. Yet these same qualities contributed to his effectiveness in a high-stakes environment. He prioritized the mission above all else, even if it meant sacrificing personal popularity. The foundation of King's leadership was built on a combination of intellect, experience, discipline, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. These elements came together to create a leader capable of handling the immense pressures of global war. His early life and career were not just a prelude to his wartime role, they were the process through which he became the person capable of fulfilling that role. By the time he assumed full control of naval operations, King was not simply another admiral among many. He was the product of years of preparation, shaped by challenges, informed by innovation, and driven by a clear sense of purpose. His journey from a determined cadet to the highest ranks of the Navy illustrates how leadership is built, not given, and how the qualities developed over time can ultimately define the course of history.